In today's video, we'll be going over a more realistic app. This computes the times that tickets were in given states. For example, new, in progress, blocked, etc. And this is an interesting video because the code that we'll start with was written by somebody else, but he's writing this with a traditional programming mindset. And I did get a request from some people that they wanted to see how I revised an app and how I tweaked an app. And so this is what we'll talk about today. So hopefully by going through this, you'll get a sense of how to write Forthic code in, I'll call it a canonical style, which I guess the canon is what I decide. But yeah, so let's get started with this. So the first step is, so if you don't have your Forthic environment set up, if you don't have your Jira tokens, see the Jira setup video first. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this main.forthic.start, and I copy it into this main.forthic file. And that way you can see where we started and where we ended up. But the very first thing is that you want to get something running. And that's just kind of, I think it's in general, that's a nice frame of mind when you're building any type of software. It's really easier to start with something that's running and revise it so it's still running, rather than to have something that doesn't run and revise it a bunch of times and hope that you'll fix it at the end, because that is just gonna cost you a lot of time. The space that you wander in, it multiplies really fast. It's not worth it. Just start with something that works and just keep it working. So here, what I'll do is, there's this get tickets word, and you can put your own JQL here. I'm gonna put my JQL here. And let's give it a try. So I'm in my Forthic directory. So I'm gonna start the server. All right, and now I'm gonna go to let me see, yeah, let me go to where that's running. And that's the time and state example. And so what's going to happen, like if we look at the code real quick, every Forthic app, at least written in this repository, it starts by executing a main page. And this is the entry point for all of the Forthic apps that you'll see. And what it's going to do is call this word print duration for tickets. And we're going to rename this in a minute. But first of all, let's just leave it as is, as I say. Let's get it working. And so it's going to print that. And what that's going to do is it's going to format some HTML here. It's going to do this state duration for tickets, convert that to a set of lines. State duration for tickets gets the tickets that we've specified here. And essentially, it computes the duration for each ticket. So you'll start with an array of tickets, and you'll get back an array of state durations, and that's what we'll print. So let's give that a try. And we can see what it's doing if you look in the terminal. So yeah, so it's grabbing the tickets. So what this part is that it's also grabbing the change log for each ticket, because that's something that we'll need for this. And if we hop back here, you'll see that we have some empty records, so probably tickets that were deleted. And then you have information about how long tickets were in different states. And the way this is outputting is in days. Let's start revising this code by doing a little bit of renaming. So the first thing is we see this print duration for tickets. That's a lot of words. In Forthic, it's nice to have a short word. Ideally, it's like a single word. And so here, if I look at this, it's really in my mind, this is the report. And the printing of it, to put a verb here it's a little redundant in my opinion. We'd want to just call it a report. And then we would also change all of the instances to be report as well. Okay. And yeah, we can line that up. Okay. Next thing, let's see, state duration for tickets. This is another longish name. Let's look at this for a second. And I think what I'm gonna do is actually let's rename this one a little bit later because there's a couple of things I want to do first. So the next one is this 2 lines word, and this is really a utility. So what it's doing is anytime you see a pipe character, this is applying to an array of items, and what it's doing is it's mapping this word to JSON over each element in that array. So basically, the way we're using it is we'll have some object. Since we're running this in Python, it'll be a Python object. And so for each of those Python objects, we will convert them into JSON strings, and then we'll join them with these line breaks. And that's how we convert an array of objects into a set of lines. And since this is a utility, I like to keep these things separate. And yeah, I'll just call it utils. Okay. And okay, so let's look at this definition. Again, get tickets, I would just call that tickets. I don't think, I like to just have the noun. I don't want to have like the getting of it, because in some sense, I don't really care where the tickets came from. I don't care where we got them. I don't care how we got them. All I care is that I have tickets. And then this push JQL record. Really, it's just storing, if you look here, we're just storing the value of, in this case, it's not even tickets, it's a single ticket, because, and the way I can tell that is we have an array of tickets here, and I'm mapping this string over each element in that array. And so what'll happen is that each element in this tickets array will be pushed onto the stack. Then we're going to run this string. And so when we run this push JQL record, we're just going to be setting the value of a ticket. And since, so this is kind of misnamed. So it's not really ticket, it's ticket. And in a way, these words, this is a setting of that variable, and this is the getting of the value of that variable. And there's really no reason to create another word to wrap that. It's, in a way, it's nicer just to see where that's being done. And by convention, I put that in parentheses like this. So this just gives an indication that I'm kind of pulling something off of the stack and putting it into a variable. And so that's an idiom that I like to use. Parentheses and forthic are just white space, so they're not really anything. So just like in English, they're not really anything. Okay, so we have that push JQL record. So that's done, and so let's look at pull JQL. Okay, here we're using this in a couple of places, and really what this is it's getting the value of the ticket. And so we could just write that explicitly instead of wrapping it in this word. Okay, and I think that's all the ones we have, right? Yep. So now we can delete these lines of code. And you see how things are getting a little bit shorter. And so what this is doing, so what ticket resolution is doing is that it's looking for the resolution field, the value of the resolution field in the current ticket. And one convention I like to use is if I'm using a variable like this, I like to indicate that in the naming convention. So I like to call that lowercase ticket and lowercase ticket. And this is actually a categorical concept, and I'll talk about that not in this video, but in another one. But yeah, so that's kind of there, and let's rename that everywhere. Okay, so that's only here, and I really should be doing just a find and replace on these, but oh well. It's short, so it's not too bad. Okay. And likewise, we can also rename these words in this using the same convention. So I can call this ticket status changes and ticket state duration. Okay. And yeah, so then I have to name this ticket that is changes as well. Okay, and oh, you know what? I really should just do the find and replace, but it's okay. So hopefully I did everything right. And so let's just give it a try. So I'm gonna load this up and see what's going on. So yeah, so the fact that it's doing something is good. That means that there weren't any syntax errors or missing quotes. And actually that didn't take very long this time. So let's see that. Yeah, so it ran again. And so that's in much better shape. Let's go on to the next section. Okay, one thing that I just noticed here is that this state duration for ticket definition really doesn't do anything. Is that it's just a wrapper for this ticket state duration. So let's just get rid of this, and yeah, so we'll put it here. Okay, so even shorter. And there's one more change that I'd like to make, and this one is more than renaming. This is more of a philosophical change. And in particular, if you see what we're doing is we have a set of tickets, and then we're mapping them into a set of duration objects. And what I would rather do is preserve the ticket information. And so what I would rather do is maybe, I mean, you could do this in different ways, but for today, let's just call these augmented tickets. Sometimes I'll do tickets with duration or something like that. But for today, let's just do something like this. So what we'll do is, instead of using this bang operator, which basically takes the ticket off of the stack and stores it in this ticket variable, you know, as we're mapping over the tickets, I'm going to use something that's a shorthand, and it's a ticket bang add. And so if you recall here, the at means that we're retrieving the value of a variable. And so this just means we are setting or popping the value off the stack, putting into ticket, and then getting the value right back. And so the net of it is that this ticket variable is set and that we leave the ticket on the stack. So at this point, we are free to call, because the ticket variable is set, we're free to call this ticket word and any word that starts with this lowercase ticket. And that's a key reason why we follow this convention, is that once that variable is set, then any of these words can be called at will. So in particular, this word can be called at will. And what we can do is we can just set the duration field of the ticket to be the ticket state duration. And so it's a, and let's also move this to here. All right. It's a philosophical change, as I mentioned, because what we want is we don't want just the state duration. We also want that in the context of each ticket. All right. So if we run this again, okay. So now you could see those empty tickets were basically, I said they were deleted. That was my first thought, but actually these are ones that have not yet been resolved. There's basically nothing has happened to them yet, and so there's nothing to say about them. Whereas the ones that are done have some information. And what's nice about this is before we just had this duration information. You know, that's all we had. But here we also have, you know, the ticket, the last state, the resolution. So everything that, in particular, this key is interesting, because then with the key, we can go back and figure out other information if we want. This idea of preserving information is really important. So what we've done is we've really created this one-to-one correspondence between the original set of tickets and the tickets that are augmented with the state duration information. And because these are one-to-one, in some sense, they're the same. And so we can pass these augmented tickets to any place that would take a ticket. And we could use that information to, for example, we could, if we had the assignees in, so if we, actually, let's do this. Let's add the assignee here and rerun this. With the assignee in place, we can now also roll this up by the assignee manager. We can do stats on each person. So there's all kinds of information that we have now that we didn't have in the first version of this application. And as you saw there, it was really easy just to add another field to the ticket. And the other side of this is all of these revisions that we've made have also made this file a lot shorter and more tweakable because it's more categorical. So to recap, what we did today was we looked at the time and state example. We got it running for our own JQL. We revised it to rename some of the words and to rethink some of the words to make them more categorical, in particular so that the result had a one-to-one correspondence to the tickets. And to illustrate how that could be useful, we tweaked the code to add an assignee. So in part 2, we'll write our data out to a Google spreadsheet. So make sure you have your Google OAuth token set up if you'd like to follow along, and I will add a link to that in the description. Thanks.